The champagne had just been poured when two small figures appeared beside his table. They were maybe 6 years old, dressed in matching navy blazers that looked expensive and slightly uncomfortable. Their dark eyes held an intensity that seemed wrong for children at a party, and they stared at Graham Weston with a focus that made the crystal glass freeze halfway to his lips. "You are our father," the taller one said. The words were clear enough to carry across the white tablecloths and flickering candles. Conversations at nearby tables faltered, then stopped entirely. Graham felt the blood drain from his face as the evening tilted sideways. Vanessa's hand dropped from his arm like he had burned her. "What did you just say?" But the boys were not looking at her. They were looking at Graham with eyes that somehow knew him, though he had never seen them before in his life. Except he had seen those eyes every morning in his mirror. In every childhood photograph his mother kept on her mantel. These were his eyes staring back at him from two small faces he did not recognize. "Our mother said we should meet you," the smaller boy added quietly. "She said you might not remember us. But we wanted to see your face." The room had grown silent enough to hear the pianist shifting pages at the grand piano near the terrace doors. Graham searched his memory desperately, found nothing, and then found everything. A single name surfaced from 8 years of deliberate forgetting. Celeste. Welcome back to another powerful story, my beloved listeners. Kindly tell where you are watching from and what time it is where you are at. If you are new here, prepare for a story of betrayal, unexpected love, and what truly makes a family. Drop everything and listen closely. This tale of heartbreak and redemption might just change how you view love and family forever. The autumn gala at Whitmore House drew the kind of guests who measured wealth not in dollars but in generations. The historic estate with its Georgian columns wrapped in evening mist had hosted philanthropic gatherings for nearly a century. Tonight's event benefited children's literacy programs across the region, a cause that photographed well and attracted substantial donations from those seeking both tax advantages and social standing. Graham had arrived that evening feeling invincible. His fiancée Vanessa stood beside him in a gown that cost more than most people earned in a month. The engagement ring he had presented 3 weeks earlier caught the candlelight from the crystal chandeliers overhead. She was laughing at something the mayor had said, her practiced charm making everyone in their circle feel individually important. In 20 minutes, they would take the small stage near the orchestra and announce their engagement formally to the assembled guests. The press had been notified. His publicist had prepared remarks. Everything was proceeding according to plan. And then the boys appeared. She walked toward them through the crowd, and 8 years collapsed into a single breath. Celeste Monroe was not the woman he had left behind. That woman had been a junior architect in his development firm, brilliant but uncertain, too trusting to recognize how thoroughly she was being used. The woman approaching now wore authority like a second skin. Her silver gown moved with her confident stride. Diamond earrings caught the light with every step. She commanded the attention of everyone she passed, and she did not seem to notice or care. Graham understood with sudden terrible clarity that she had become someone extraordinary while he had merely become wealthy. "Hello, Graham." Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I apologize for interrupting your evening. The boys insisted on meeting you, and I decided they were old enough to understand who their father is." Vanessa stood so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "Who the hell are you? What is this?" Celeste did not look at her. She kept her eyes on Graham, and in that steady gaze he saw 8 years of questions he had never bothered to answer. Graham found his voice, though it came out broken. "They are mine." The admission felt pulled from somewhere deep and unwilling. "Vanessa, they are mine." The words rippled outward through the gathered guests like stones dropped in still water. Phones appeared from evening bags and jacket pockets. The orchestra stopped playing. The elegant room had become a theater, and Graham Weston was the show. Celeste placed her hands gently on the boy's shoulders. "Owen. Theo. This is Graham Weston. Say what you came to say." The taller boy, Owen, met Graham's eyes with an intensity that seemed far beyond his years. "We just wanted to know what you looked like. Mom said you left before we were born. She said sometimes people are not ready to be parents." The smaller one, Theo, spoke more softly. "She said it was not our fault. She wanted us to know that." Graham's throat closed completely. He could not speak. He could not move. He could only stand there as the truth of his past burned through the careful fiction of his present. "That is all we needed," Celeste said. Her voice remained perfectly steady, without anger or accusation. "Just fact. Thank you for your time, Graham. We will not trouble you again." She gathered the boys close and turned toward the exit. The crowd parted for her like water around stone, and Graham watched them walk away with the same paralysis that had seized him 8 years before when she had needed him most. "Do not follow me." Vanessa's voice could have frozen the champagne in its flutes. "Do not call. Do not explain. We are done." She removed the engagement ring and placed it on the white tablecloth beside his untouched glass. Then she walked out without looking back, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Graham stood alone at the center of the room. Every phone was pointed at him. Every face held some mixture of shock and judgment. His publicist was pushing through the crowd toward him, her own phone already buzzing with notifications that would not stop for days. But Graham barely noticed any of it. He was watching through the terrace windows as Celeste buckled the boys into a dark sedan with practiced efficiency. Her movements were careful and loving, the motions of a mother who had done this 1,000 times without him. She glanced back once. Their eyes met through the glass for exactly 2 seconds. Then she drove away, the tail lights disappearing into the autumn darkness, and Graham Weston understood that his carefully constructed life had just collapsed entirely. The penthouse felt like a mausoleum at 3 in the morning. Graham sat in his living room still wearing the suit from the gala, his tie loosened and his hands wrapped around a glass of bourbon he had not actually drunk. The city sprawled below his floor-to-ceiling windows, a million lights representing a million lives that were not currently imploding in spectacular fashion. His phone would not stop buzzing. Notifications kept arriving like physical blows. Hashtags were already forming on social media. Think pieces were being written in real time by people who had never met him. Women he had never spoken to were calling him every name imaginable, and honestly, men were too. His publicist had sent 23 increasingly frantic messages, all variations of the same desperate plea to call immediately before this spiraled further out of control. He did not call anyone. He could not. His voice did not work properly, and even if it had, he would not have known what to say. The bourbon sat untouched as Graham let himself remember what he had spent 8 years trying desperately to forget. It had been an architecture conference in the city, back when he was 32 and ambitious but still somewhat directionless. He was working for a development company that would eventually fail, though he did not know that then. He knew only that he was restless and hungry for something he could not name. Celeste had been presenting on sustainable restoration architecture, her passion making the entire auditorium lean forward in their seats. She was a graduate student finishing her advanced degree, working on her thesis about preserving historic buildings while adapting them for modern use. When she spoke about her work, her whole face lit up with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. He had approached her after the presentation and fumbled through an introduction that probably made him sound like a complete idiot. She had smiled that smile that could light up entire rooms and asked if he actually cared about restoration architecture or just wanted her phone number. Both, he had admitted with complete honesty. Definitely both. She had laughed and written her number on his conference program with a pen borrowed from someone nearby. Their first date lasted 14 hours straight. Coffee at 9 in the morning turned into lunch, which turned into walking through the city talking about absolutely everything. She was smarter than him, funnier than him, more passionate about her work than he had ever been about anything in his life. When Celeste looked at him, Graham felt like he could become the man she seemed to see when she smiled. They fell in love the way people do when they are young and certain they have found the only person in the entire world who truly understands them. Completely. Desperately. Terrifyingly forever. Celeste made him want to be better at everything. She challenged every lazy thought he had. She supported every ambitious dream. She loved him in a way that felt like finally coming home after being lost his entire life. For 2 incredible years, they built something beautiful together. She graduated with honors and started developing her ideas for an ethical restoration firm. He moved to a better company and started actually climbing instead of just coasting. They talked about marriage constantly. About children they would have someday. About buying a house with a big kitchen because Celeste loved cooking and feeding people she cared about. And then she got pregnant. Completely unplanned. Totally unexpected. She sat him down in their tiny shared apartment with its second-hand furniture and plants she kept alive through sheer willpower. Her hands were shaking slightly as she told him the truth. "I am pregnant. 8 weeks." She watched his face carefully as she spoke. "I am keeping the baby no matter what. You can choose to stay or choose to go, but I need you to decide clearly and quickly." Graham looked at the woman he loved more than breathing. She was terrified and hopeful and strong all at once, and all he felt was overwhelming panic. His father had left when Graham was 2 years old. Just walked out one random Tuesday morning and never came back. Never called. Never sent money. Never acknowledged Graham's existence again. Graham's mother had raised him completely alone, working 2 jobs and running on constant exhaustion. He had watched her break slowly under the impossible weight of single parenthood. He had promised himself at 10 years old that he would never put a woman through that. Never become his father. Never abandon his own children the way he had been abandoned. But standing in that small apartment, facing the reality of everything he had feared, all Graham could think was that he would fail. He would hurt them worse if he stayed and tried than if he left now, quick and clean. He would leave eventually because that was what men in his family did. Better to leave immediately than destroy them slowly over years. "I cannot do this." The words felt like they came from someone else's mouth. "I am sorry, Celeste. I am just not ready. I will never be ready." Her face crumbled like he had physically struck her. "Graham, please. We can figure this out together. We can work through this." But he was already backing toward the door. Already reaching for his coat. Already becoming exactly what he had sworn his entire life he would never become. He left that night with 1 suitcase. Changed his phone number the next morning. Moved to another city by the end of the week. He ran like the absolute coward he was, completely convinced he was sparing them from his inevitable failure as a father and partner. Except he had failed anyway. Just faster. Just more cruelly. Graham set down the untouched bourbon and watched the sun rise over a city that felt completely foreign now. Somewhere out there, Celeste was probably making breakfast for Owen and Theo. Reading to them. Getting them ready for school. Living a complete and beautiful life he would never be part of. His phone rang. The screen showed his mother's name. He almost let it go to voicemail. Almost let her join the growing list of people he could not face. But this was his mother. She had raised him alone when his father disappeared. She had worked herself to exhaustion to give him opportunities. She deserved better than silence. He answered. David Michael Weston. Her voice was pure fury mixed with absolute heartbreak, and the sound of his full name in that tone made him feel like a child again. "Tell me the news reports are wrong. Tell me you did not abandon Celeste when she was pregnant with your children." "Mom, I can explain." "Explain what exactly?" "That you were young. That you were scared. That you were not ready." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I know all of that, Graham. I was young too when your father left. I was scared too. I was not ready either. And somehow I stayed anyway. Somehow I figured it out. Somehow I built a life for you while you apparently built a life that pretended those babies did not exist. I thought I would fail them. I thought I would become dad. I thought leaving was better than staying and hurting them worse later. So you became him anyway." His mother was crying now. "Your father was a coward who destroyed our family. And I raised you better than that. At least I thought I did." The words landed like physical blows because they were completely, devastatingly true. That sweet, brilliant girl. Margaret's voice broke apart. "I loved her like my own daughter. You brought her to Christmas dinner and she made my mother's lemon cake from memory after I mentioned it exactly once. And I thought finally my son found someone worthy of him. Someone who could make him truly happy. And you left her pregnant and alone." "I know, Mom. I am so sorry. Those little boys. My grandbabies. My own grandsons. And I missed 8 years of their lives because my son was too weak to face his fear. Do you understand what you stole from them? From me. From Celeste. From yourself. Graham could not answer. There was nothing to say. Every accusation was accurate. Every word of condemnation was earned. You apologize to Celeste. Margaret's voice steadied with determination even through her tears. You apologize to those children. And then you spend every single day for the rest of your life making it right. That is all you can do now, Graham. That is your only option. How do I even begin to make this right? I do not know. But you figure it out. Because those boys deserve a father who shows up. Not the ghost who ran before they were born. She hung up before he could respond. The silence afterward felt enormous, pressing in on him from every direction. Graham sat in that silence for a long time, watching the city wake up below him while his carefully constructed life continued to crumble. The next morning brought the professional consequences he should have anticipated. His assistant called at 7 to inform him that 3 clients had already withdrawn from pending development projects, citing concerns about his personal judgment and the company's reputation. A 4th was considering their options. A foundation board he sat on had requested his immediate resignation. By noon, the news coverage had spread to every platform imaginable. Deadbeat developer exposed at charity gala. Secret family reveals real estate mogul's hidden past. The headlines wrote themselves, and they were not kind. Graham sat in his office watching his empire contract. Contracts he had spent years building evaporated with single phone calls. Investors who had praised his vision last month now expressed grave concerns about his character. Former colleagues avoided his eyes in the hallway. His publicist finally reached him around 2 in the afternoon. We need to get ahead of this story, she said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. We need a statement. Contrition. Maybe a charitable donation to single mothers or something. Something that shows you are taking responsibility. Graham looked at her across his desk. She was already strategizing. Already thinking about damage control and reputation management. Already treating this as a problem to be spun rather than a wound to be healed. I am not interested in optics, he said quietly. I am interested in making things right. Those are the same thing, Graham. Public perception is reality in this business. No. He stood up from his desk. They are not the same thing at all. He left her standing in his office and did not look back. That evening, Graham sat alone in his penthouse with his laptop open, searching for information about the woman he had abandoned. The results made him physically ill. Monroe Heritage Architecture. The company's website was elegant and professional, featuring projects spanning 3 continents. Historic theaters restored to their original grandeur. Crumbling mansions transformed into community centers. Ancient buildings preserved while being adapted for modern use. Celeste had founded the firm when the boys were barely 18 months old. She had completed additional certifications while pregnant with twins. Built the entire operation from nothing while raising 2 infants alone. And now she was an internationally recognized leader in her field, with major clients and prestigious awards and a reputation that made his own accomplishments look small and hollow. Her net worth, according to industry estimates, exceeded his by a significant margin. Graham closed his laptop and stared at the ceiling for a very long time. She had done everything they had dreamed of doing together. She had built the life they had planned. She had become exactly who she was meant to be. And she had done all of it without him. Despite him. Better without him than she ever could have been with him. The letter arrived 4 weeks later. Graham had spent those weeks in a kind of suspended animation. He went through the motions of his professional life, handling the ongoing collapse of his reputation with a numbness that surprised even him. He did not fight the board when they suggested he step back from leadership. He did not argue with investors when they pulled their money. He simply accepted each consequence as it arrived, understanding that he had earned every single one. The envelope was plain white, with no return address and his name written in careful handwriting he still recognized after 8 years. His hands shook as he opened it. Graham. The boys have been asking about you since the gala. Owen wants to know if you play chess. Theo wants to know your favorite color. They are building a picture of you in their minds, and I find myself unable to lie to them about who you are. I am not writing to forgive you. That is not something I can offer yet, and perhaps not ever. But if you want to know your sons, truly know them and not just perform fatherhood for public relations, I am willing to discuss terms. I require complete honesty in all things. I require consistency above everything else. I require that you never promise them anything you cannot deliver. And I require that you accept my judgment about what is appropriate for their well-being. If these terms are unacceptable, do not respond. If you cannot commit to all of them without exception, do not respond. If you are doing this to repair your public image rather than to repair your soul, do not respond. Celeste. Graham read the letter 7 times. Each reading revealed new layers of meaning. She was not offering reconciliation. She was not opening a door to their past. She was simply giving him a chance, a single narrow chance, to become something other than the man who had run. He began to write back immediately, then stopped himself. This could not be rushed. This could not be careless. Every word he put on paper would be weighed and measured by a woman who had every reason to expect the worst from him. He spent 3 days crafting his response. He answered the boys' questions honestly. Owen asked if he played chess, so Graham wrote about learning the game from his mother, about the tournaments he had entered as a teenager, about how chess taught him that every move has consequences that ripple forward through the entire game. Theo asked about his favorite color, so Graham wrote about how the question made him think about the color of the sky at dawn, which changed every single day, and how he supposed that made him someone who did not like to choose just one thing when the world offered so many beautiful options. He asked questions of his own. Careful questions about their lives, their interests, their schools, the things that made them laugh and the things that scared them. He did not make promises. He did not declare his love for children he had never known. He simply offered honesty and asked for a chance to learn who they were. He mailed the letter and waited in agony for a response. It came a week later. 2 letters this time, one from each boy. Celeste had included a brief note explaining that she had read both letters first to ensure they were appropriate, and that she would continue to review all correspondence in both directions. Owen's letter was precise and logical, written in careful handwriting on lined paper. He asked about Graham's education, his work, whether he had any siblings. He asked what Graham's earliest childhood memory was and whether he had any hobbies. The questions felt like tests, which Graham supposed they were. Theo's letter was different. The paper was covered with drawings in the margins, small colorful illustrations of houses and trees and stars. He asked if Graham liked to draw. He asked about Graham's favorite food and whether he liked animals and whether thunderstorms scared him or excited him. At the bottom, in slightly Messier handwriting, he had written a question that made Graham's chest ache with sudden grief. Are you sad that you missed watching us grow up? I think I would be really sad if I were you. Graham answered every question from both boys. He wrote about his childhood, about growing up without a father, about watching his mother work herself to exhaustion to keep them housed and fed. He wrote about discovering architecture in college, about the way buildings could hold history in their bones. He told them he had been scared of many things in his life, and that running from fear had always made everything worse. To Theo's final question, he wrote simply, "Yes, I am very sad. I missed so much, and I can never get that time back. But I am grateful for the chance to know you now. That matters more than I can say." The letters became a rhythm. 1 exchange per week, reviewed by Celeste, delivered through the mail. Graham answered every question the boys asked. He included drawings of his own for Theo, terrible amateur sketches that made him feel foolish but that Theo seemed to genuinely appreciate based on his enthusiastic responses. He sent Owen logic puzzles and brain teasers that he remembered from his own childhood, and Owen sent back solutions along with harder puzzles of his own design. 6 months of letters. 6 months of building something from nothing. 6 months of words on paper traveling back and forth between 2 lives that had never touched. And then Celeste wrote again. The boys would like to meet you in person. I am not comfortable with unsupervised contact yet, and I may never be. But if you are willing to accept my conditions, I am willing to arrange a supervised visit. 1 hour. At my home. I will be present the entire time. You will sit where I tell you to sit. You will leave when I tell you to leave. You will not make promises of any kind. You will not give them gifts or try to buy their affection. You will simply be present and honest and let them decide what they think of you. If these terms are acceptable, the visit will be Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. Do not be late. Graham read the letter 3 times, then 4, then 5. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the paper. Saturday at 2. 4 days away. 4 days until he would meet his sons for the first time since they were cells dividing in their mother's body. He wrote back immediately. 2 words. I accept. The house was not what he expected. Graham had imagined something cold and modern, a showcase of Celeste's professional success. Instead, he found himself standing in front of a restored Victorian home painted a warm shade of blue with white trim around the windows. The garden was well tended. Wind chimes hung from the porch eaves. It looked like a home, not a statement. He arrived at exactly 1:57. Not early enough to seem overeager. Not late enough to disrespect her boundaries. He had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on simple clothes that would not intimidate or impress. Just a person. Just a man meeting his children for the first time. Celeste opened the door before he could knock. She looked exactly as composed as she had at the gala, though today she wore simple clothes rather than formal attire. Her expression gave nothing away. Thank you for being on time. Her voice was neutral, professional. The boys are nervous. I am nervous. You are probably nervous. Let us just see what happens. She stepped aside to let him enter. The interior of the house was warm and lived in, with artwork on the walls that looked like it had been created by children's hands. Books everywhere. Plants in the windows. The smell of something baking in the kitchen. Graham followed her into the living room, where Owen and Theo sat on the couch in matching positions with identical serious expressions. They had dressed carefully for this occasion, he realized. Matching blue sweaters. Hair neatly combed. They looked like they were preparing for a job interview. Celeste pointed to a chair positioned several feet from the couch. Graham sat where she indicated without question. I will be in the kitchen, she said. The door will be open. I will hear everything. She left, and Graham found himself alone with his sons for the first time in their lives. The silence stretched for several long seconds. Owen studied him with analytical intensity. Theo fidgeted slightly but did not look away. Hi, Graham said finally. His voice felt strange in his own ears. I am Graham. I am your biological father. But I have not earned the right to be called Dad yet. Maybe I never will earn that. But I would like to get to know you both if you are willing to let me try. Owen spoke first, direct and challenging. Why did you leave us? Graham could have lied. He could have softened the truth. He could have made excuses about youth and fear and circumstances beyond his control. He did none of those things. I was afraid. My own father left me when I was very young, and I was terrified of becoming like him. So instead of trying and possibly failing, I ran away before you were even born. I hurt your mother deeply, and I missed watching both of you grow up. That is the complete truth, and I am sorry for all of it. Owen absorbed this without visible reaction. Theo's voice was smaller when he spoke. Do you love us? Graham felt his eyes fill with tears he did not try to hide. I do not know you yet, and I think love requires actually knowing someone. But I already care about you more than I thought was possible. I want to earn the right to love you properly. If you will let me try. The hour passed in awkward but genuine conversation. The boys asked questions about his work, his apartment, whether he had pets. Graham answered everything honestly, without embellishment or performance. He asked them about their schools, their friends, the things they liked to do. Owen talked about the coding class he was taking. Theo showed Graham a drawing he had been working on, explaining each element with obvious pride. When Celeste appeared in the doorway to signal that time was up, Graham felt like only minutes had passed. Thank you for giving me this time, he said, standing carefully. It meant everything. Theo surprised everyone by hugging him. Quick, almost businesslike, but real. His small arms wrapped around Graham's waist for exactly 3 seconds before releasing. "You can come back if you want to," Theo said. Owen did not hug him, but he nodded with what looked like reluctant approval. "Maybe next Saturday, too." Graham looked at Celeste, hardly daring to hope. She gave him a single brief nod. "Same time. Same rules. Do not be late." He walked to his car feeling like he had been given something precious and fragile that could shatter at any moment. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel. That evening, alone in his apartment, Graham realized he could not remember the last time he had felt anything like hope. The visits became routine over the following months. Every Saturday at 2, supervised by Celeste. 1 hour that never felt long enough. Slowly, carefully, Graham learned who his sons actually were. Owen was analytical and cautious, slow to trust, quick to notice inconsistency. He tested Graham constantly with questions designed to reveal weakness or dishonesty. When Graham passed those tests, Owen's respect grew incrementally. When Graham made mistakes, Owen noted them without comment but clearly filed them away for future reference. Their chess games became ritual. Graham had been a state champion in high school, though he did not mention this at first. He let Owen win the first few games, trying not to bruise the boy's ego. Owen caught him immediately. "You are better than you are showing," Owen said, his dark eyes narrowing. "Do not let me win. That is lying with your hands." Graham nodded, chastened. From that point forward, he played honestly. Owen lost more often, but he learned faster, and his respect for Graham deepened. "You taught me that losing is part of getting better," Owen told him one Saturday. "That means something." Theo was different. He was warmer, more open, more willing to offer grace that Graham had not earned. He asked Graham to draw with him, laughing gently at Graham's amateur attempts while patiently explaining techniques. No, you have to blend the shadows like this." Theo's small hands guided Graham's larger ones across the paper. "See how it makes everything feel more real. You cannot just color things dark. You have to layer." Graham tried, failed, tried again. His drawings were terrible compared to Theo's natural talent. But Theo beamed with pride at every small improvement. "You are actually learning," Theo said. "I am proud of you." The words hit Graham with unexpected force. His 6-year-old son was proud of him. For trying. For showing up. For not giving up when things were hard. Theo gave him homework. "Draw one thing every day and bring it next week." Graham did, even though his sketches were embarrassing. Theo's weekly critiques were gentle but honest. "This tree looks sad. Were you sad when you drew it?" Graham considered lying, then remembered Owen's lesson about honesty. "Yes. I was sad. That is okay. Mom says feelings need to come out somehow. Maybe your sad tree is your feelings coming out." Graham kept every drawing both boys made. Every letter they had written. Every small artifact of this new relationship he was building. He pinned them to a board in his apartment where he could see them while eating breakfast alone each morning. 3 months into the Saturday visits, something shifted. Graham had been in a meeting 3 blocks from the boys' school when a fire alarm began blaring. He looked out the window and saw smoke rising, though it seemed to be coming from a food truck rather than the building itself. His heart stopped anyway. He was running before he consciously decided to move. Through the lobby. Out the door. Down the street. His expensive shoes slapped against the pavement as he sprinted toward the school. The evacuation was chaotic. Hundreds of children streaming out of buildings. Teachers shouting instructions. Parents arriving in varying states of panic. Graham scanned the crowds desperately, looking for 2 small figures in the matching jackets Celeste always dressed them in. He found Theo first. The boy was alone near the parking lot, separated from his class in the confusion. His face was streaked with tears and his small body shook with panicked breaths. He was looking everywhere for someone familiar and finding only strangers. Graham approached carefully, not wanting to frighten him further. He knelt down to eye level. "Theo. It is Graham. You are completely safe. It is just an alarm. Nothing is actually wrong." Theo's huge, terrified eyes focused on him. "Graham." "Yes." Your mom is on her way right now. Can I stay with you until she gets here? Would that be okay? Theo nodded frantically. Graham sat beside him on the curb, careful not to touch him without permission. Just being present. Just being there. Want to hear a story about stars while we wait? Okay. Graham told him about constellations, keeping his voice calm and steady. He explained how ancient peoples looked at random scattered stars and made them into pictures and stories. How the light from stars takes so long to reach Earth that we are literally seeing the past when we look up at the night sky. So the stars we see might not even exist anymore. Theo's breathing had steadied. His tears were drying. Some of them, yes. They might have died millions of years ago. But we still see their light anyway. Theo considered this. That is kind of sad. Or kind of beautiful. Maybe both. Even when things are gone, they leave something behind. Their light still reaches us. Celeste arrived moments later, running from her car with pure terror on her face. She scooped Theo up and held him tight, her whole body shaking with relief. Then she saw Graham standing nearby. Understanding crossed her expression immediately. I was nearby for a meeting, Graham explained quickly. I heard the sirens and wanted to make sure they were okay. I did not take him anywhere. I just stayed with him until you got here. Theo looked up at his mother. Mama, Graham told me about stars. It was really nice. Celeste studied Graham for a long moment. Something in her expression changed. Something hard and guarded softened almost imperceptibly. Thank you, she said quietly, for being here. Just 2 words. But they mattered more than anything else that had happened in months. That evening, after the boys were asleep and the chaos of the day had settled, Graham's phone buzzed with a text message from a number he did not recognize. This is Celeste. I got your number from the school emergency contact forms. Graham stared at the screen, hardly daring to breathe. The boys have asked if you can come for dinner sometime. Not just the Saturday visits. A real dinner. With all of us. Graham typed his response with shaking fingers. I would like that very much. When? This Friday. 6 o'clock. Do not bring anything. Just yourself. He set the phone down and sat in his apartment as the city lights flickered on outside his window. Something had shifted today. Something fundamental. For the first time since the gala, Graham allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. Dinner became part of the routine. Fridays at 6, in addition to Saturdays at 2. Graham showed up with nothing but himself, as instructed. He helped set the table. He complimented whatever Celeste had cooked. He answered the boys' endless questions and asked questions of his own. Celeste remained guarded, but she was present now in ways she had not been before. She joined their conversations instead of retreating to another room. She corrected Owen's facts when he got something wrong and praised Theo's latest artwork. She laughed occasionally, and the sound of it made Graham's chest ache with memory. One evening after the boys had gone to bed, Celeste asked Graham to stay for tea. They sat on her back porch in the autumn chill, watching their breath fog in the cold air. You have been consistent, she said finally. I did not expect that. I know. Owen asked me yesterday if we would ever get married. Graham's heart stuttered. What did you tell him? I told him that some people find their way back to each other, and some people build something new instead. Both can be good. Which are we? Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to look at him directly. I do not know. But I am not running from the question anymore. And neither are you. Graham understood that this was not forgiveness. Not love. Not reconciliation. But it was possibility. And possibility was more than he had any right to expect. The road forward remained uncertain. The past could not be erased. But something was being built from the wreckage of what he had destroyed, one dinner at a time. Celeste's parents arrived the following weekend for a visit with the grandchildren. Graham had met them briefly at a school event a few weeks prior. They had been cold but civil. He expected more of the same. What he did not expect was the conversation that would change everything. Martin Monroe cornered Graham in the kitchen while the others were occupied in the living room. Celeste's father was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "I do not understand why my daughter is letting you near those boys," Martin said without preamble. "After what you did." "I am trying to be a better father," Graham replied carefully. "Better late than never. You are not their father. You are a biology donor who ran at the first sign of difficulty." Graham absorbed the words without defending himself. He had learned that defensiveness only made things worse. "If you hurt them again," Martin continued, "I will personally make certain you never see them." Graham nodded slowly. "If I hurt them again, I will not deserve to see them." Something flickered in Martin's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion at a response he had not anticipated. The moment passed. Martin returned to the living room without another word. Graham remained in the kitchen, composing himself before rejoining the family. Later that week, Owen said something that lodged itself in Graham's mind like a splinter. They were playing chess in the living room while Theo drew nearby and Celeste worked at the kitchen table. The house felt warm and full of life. Graham was losing, as he often did these days. Owen had surpassed his skill level months ago. "Grandpa Martin does not like you," Owen said suddenly, not looking up from the board. "I know." "Why not?" "Because I hurt your mother very badly once. Grandparents do not forget things like that." Owen moved his bishop. "Heck. Will he ever forgive you?" "I do not know. That is not up to me." Owen looked up then, his dark eyes thoughtful. "Grandpa told me something once. He said you tried to come back. A long time ago. Before we were born." Graham's hand froze over his king. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What did he say exactly?" "He said you came to their house. Before Mom even knew she was having twins. He said you were crying." Owen's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were recounting a chess strategy rather than dismantling Graham's understanding of his own history. "He said you wanted to marry her. He said you begged for a chance. He said he told you to go away and never come back." Graham's memory shifted. Something buried surfaced like a body rising from deep water. 3 weeks after leaving. Consumed by regret. Driving through the night to Celeste's parents' house because he did not know where else to find her. Standing on their porch at midnight, crying so hard he could barely speak. "Please. I made a terrible mistake. I love her. I want to make this right." Martin's face in the doorway, granite and cold. "You are not worthy of my daughter. You already proved that when you ran. Leave and do not come back. She does not want to see you. Neither do we." Graham had buried that memory so deep it had ceased to exist. The shame had erased it. The self-hatred had wiped it clean. But it had happened. 3 weeks after running, he had tried to come back. And Martin Monroe had sent him away. Owen was still watching him with those too perceptive eyes. "So you did try." Graham's voice came out rough. "Once. I tried once. And when your grandfather told me I was not worthy of your mother, I believed him. I left instead of fighting." "So Grandpa made you stay away." Graham shook his head slowly. "No, Owen. I made myself stay away. Your grandfather just confirmed what I already believed about myself." Owen considered this for a long moment. Then he moved his rook. "Checkmate," he said quietly. "You lost because you stopped paying attention." Graham stared at the board, at the position he had failed to see developing. Then he looked at his son. "You are right. I stopped paying attention a long time ago." That night, after the boys were asleep and the house was quiet, Graham found Celeste in the kitchen. She was washing dishes by hand, though she had a dishwasher. Some habits of solitary survival died hard. "I need to tell you something," Graham said. "Something Owen told me tonight." Celeste turned off the water but did not turn around. "What is it?" "He told me about a conversation with your father. About something that happened 8 years ago." Celeste went very still. Graham pressed forward. 3 weeks after I left you, I came back. I drove to your parents' house in the middle of the night. I was crying. I begged your father for a chance to make things right. I told him I wanted to marry you. He watched her shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. Your father told me I was not worthy of you. He told me to leave and never come back. And I listened. I believed him. I gave up after one rejection. Celeste turned slowly. Her face was unreadable. You came back. 3 weeks later. I blocked the memory somehow. Shame or self-hatred. I do not know. But it happened. Owen reminded me of something I had apparently told your father during that conversation, and it all came back. The kitchen felt very small. The air between them heavy with 8 years of misunderstanding. You tried, Celeste said quietly. You actually tried. Once. And then I gave up at the first obstacle. I should have tried harder. I should have found another way to reach you. I should have kept showing up until someone listened. Yes. You should have. I am not telling you this to make excuses. Your father turning me away does not erase the fact that I left in the first place. It does not excuse 8 years of absence. But I thought you should know the complete truth. Even the parts that complicate things. Celeste leaned against the counter. Her expression shifted through several emotions Graham could not quite read. My father, she said finally. My father sent you away. He thought he was protecting you. He was wrong. Graham nodded. Maybe. Or maybe he was right. Maybe I would have run again eventually. Maybe his rejection just saved everyone time. Do you believe that? Graham considered the question carefully. I do not know. I was so scared back then. So convinced I would fail at fatherhood the way my father failed. Maybe your father saw that fear and decided it was weakness that would destroy you. It was weakness. Yes. It was. Celeste pushed away from the counter and walked past Graham toward the window. She stood there looking out at the night for a long moment. I spent 8 years believing you never even tried to come back. I told myself the story of a man who ran and never looked behind him. It made things simpler, cleaner, easier to hate you. I am sorry. Do not apologize yet. She turned to face him. This does not change what you did. You still left me pregnant and alone. You still missed 8 years of your son's lives. One attempt to return, blocked by my father or not, does not erase any of that. I know. But it changes the story. It makes things more complicated. And I do not know yet what to do with complicated. Graham understood. He had spent months learning that understanding was not the same as resolution. That complexity did not resolve into neat conclusions. What do you need from me? He asked. Celeste looked at him with eyes that held 8 years of pain and 6 months of cautious hope. I need you to keep showing up, she said. The same as before. No matter what you learned tonight. No matter how this changes your understanding of the past. You keep coming to dinner on Fridays. You keep coming on Saturdays. You keep being consistent. I will. And I need time. To talk to my father. To process what this means. To figure out what story I tell myself now. Take whatever time you need. She nodded once. Then she returned to the dishes, turning the water back on. Graham let himself out quietly. He drove home through empty streets, his mind spinning with 8 years of misunderstanding rearranging themselves into a new pattern. He had tried to come back. He had been turned away. He had believed the rejection because believing it was easier than fighting. But she had not known. All this time, she had not known. And now she did. Graham had no idea what would happen next. He only knew that he would show up on Friday at 6, and Saturday at 2, and every other day that Celeste allowed him. Because whatever came next, consistency was the only thing he could actually control. Celeste drove to her parents' house alone the following morning. She had not slept. The revelation Graham had shared kept circling through her mind like a bird trapped in a room, searching for an exit that did not exist. Her father was in his study when she arrived, reading the newspaper the way he had every morning for as long as she could remember. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, and something in her expression must have warned him, because he set the paper down carefully. Celeste. What is wrong? She did not sit. She stood in the doorway of the room where she had done homework as a child, where she had told her parents about her pregnancy, where she had cried herself empty after Graham disappeared. "You sent him away," she said. 8 years ago. When he came to marry me." Martin's face went pale. Then his jaw tightened with defensive resolve. "You were broken when he left. I watched you cry for days. That boy ran the moment things got difficult. He came back." Celeste's voice was steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. 3 weeks later. He tried. 2 weeks. Martin corrected automatically, then seemed to realize his mistake. "It proves nothing. 2 weeks of guilt does not make a man worthy of my daughter. You decided that for me." Celeste stepped into the room, her whole body trembling with controlled fury. "You decided I was not capable of making that choice myself. I protected you. You stole my choice. You let me spend 8 years believing he never even looked back. You let me raise those boys alone while telling myself their father did not care enough to try. He would have run again." Martin's voice rose. "Men like that always run again. I saved you from worse heartbreak later. You do not know that. You could not possibly know that. I know men like him. Weak. Scared. Unable to commit when things get hard. And you decided for me." Celeste's voice cracked on the last word. "You treated me like a child who could not handle her own life. Like I had not already proven I could handle anything." Her mother appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. Dorothy's face was already wet with tears. "Tell her," Celeste said without turning. "Tell her what you did." Martin looked at his wife. Something passed between them that Celeste could not read. "We both knew," Dorothy said quietly. "I agreed with your father at the time. We watched you shatter when Graham left. We could not bear to watch it happen again. So you lied to me. For 8 years. We did not lie. We simply did not tell you. That is the same thing." Celeste turned to face her mother. "Every time I told you, I wondered why he never tried to reach me. Every time I cried about being abandoned completely. You knew the truth and you said nothing." Dorothy's face crumbled. "We were trying to protect you, baby. I was not yours to protect like that. I was 28 years old. I was pregnant. I was an adult who deserved the truth about the father of my children." The room fell silent. Martin sat rigid in his chair. Dorothy wept quietly in the doorway. Celeste stood between them, feeling the foundations of her family shift beneath her feet. "I need you to understand something," Celeste said finally. Her voice had gone cold and flat. "Those boys in my house. Your grandsons. They have spent their whole lives believing their father wanted nothing to do with them. Owen has trust issues because he learned before he could talk that fathers disappear. Theo asks me every few months if there is something wrong with him that made his dad leave." Martin flinched. "And now I find out that their father tried to come back. He stood on your porch crying and begging for another chance. And you sent him away without ever telling me." "He was not worthy of you," Martin said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "That was not your decision to make." Celeste walked toward the door. "I am not asking you to apologize to me. I am asking you to understand what you did. You did not just affect my life. You affected my sons' lives. Every struggle they have had with abandonment. Every question about why their father did not want them. That is yours now too." She left without saying goodbye. She drove home in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. That night, after the boys were asleep, she sat alone in her bedroom and stared at a box she had not opened in years. Inside were photographs from another lifetime. Her and Graham at architecture conferences, laughing together in their tiny apartment. The two of them on a hiking trip, exhausted and happy, his arm around her shoulders like it belonged there. She had spent 8 years hating him. 12 months watching him change. And now she learned that the story she had told herself was incomplete. He had tried to come back. Weakly, yes. After only 2 weeks. Giving up at the first rejection. But he had tried. It did not erase what he did. It did not excuse 8 years of absence. But it meant he was not the monster she had needed him to be. It meant the truth was more complicated than the simple narrative of abandonment she had constructed to survive. Celeste pulled out a more recent photograph. Graham with the boys at the park 3 weeks ago. Owen was teaching him a chess strategy. Theo was showing him a leaf he had found. Graham's face held an expression she had not seen in years. Not the charming confidence he had worn when they first met. Something quieter. Something humbler. Something real. He had been consistent for over a year now. Had not missed a single visit. Had not made a single promise he could not keep. Had not tried to buy the boy's affection or manipulate his way back into her good graces. He had simply shown up, again and again, exactly as she had demanded. And now she had to decide what to do with a story that no longer fit the shape she had given it. Friday arrived. Graham appeared at 6 o'clock as always, exactly on time. He stood on her porch with empty hands and uncertain eyes. "I was not sure you would still want me to come," he said quietly. "I told you to keep showing up." Celeste stepped aside to let him enter. "That has not changed." They did not discuss her parents during dinner. The boys carried the conversation with stories about school and friends and a science project Owen was designing. Graham listened and asked questions and laughed at Theo's jokes. Everything proceeded as if nothing had shifted. But something had shifted. Celeste could feel it in the spaces between words. In the way Graham looked at her when he thought she was not watching. In the careful distance they both maintained, as if getting too close might ignite something neither of them was ready to face. After the boys went to bed, Graham moved toward the door. "Wait," Celeste said. She surprised herself. She had not planned to ask him to stay. Graham turned. "I talked to my father. I assumed you would." He admitted it. "Everything you told me. He said you showed up crying, begging for a chance. He said he told you that you were not worthy of me." Graham nodded slowly. "That is what happened. Why did you believe him?" The question hung between them. Graham was quiet for a long moment. "Because I already believed it," he said finally. "I had just abandoned the woman I loved because I was terrified of becoming my father. I drove away from you knowing I was doing the worst thing I had ever done. And then I spent 2 weeks trying to convince myself I had made the right choice. And then you came back. I could not stop thinking about you. About the baby. About what I was missing. So I drove to your parents' house because I did not know where else to find you. I thought if I could just see you, if I could just explain, maybe we could figure it out together. But my father stopped you." Graham shook his head. "Your father gave me an excuse to stop. He confirmed what I already believed. That I was weak. That I would hurt you again. That leaving permanently was better than staying and failing. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. Because believing him was easier than fighting. Easier than admitting I was wrong. Easier than doing the hard work of actually being a father." Celeste absorbed this. The honesty of it. The ugliness he was not trying to hide. "My father was wrong to send you away without telling me," she said carefully. "But you were wrong to give up after one rejection. I know. You should have found another way. You should have written letters. Called. Shown up at my work. Something. Anything. I know. You gave up on me. On us. On children who were not even born yet." Graham's voice cracked. "I know, Celeste. I know all of it. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Finding out that your father turned me away does not change what I did. It just means there is more than one person to blame. Including me. Especially me." Celeste looked at him for a long moment. This man who had destroyed her world 8 years ago. Who had spent the last year rebuilding something from the wreckage. Who had just admitted his own failure without trying to deflect it onto anyone else. "I do not know what to do with this," she said finally. "I spent years hating you. Then I spent months watching you change. And now I find out the story was more complicated than I knew. I do not know how to feel. You do not have to know tonight." Graham moved toward the door again. You do not have to know for a long time. I will keep showing up either way. Why? Because that is what I should have done 8 years ago. I should have kept showing up until someone listened. Until you knew I was serious. Until I had actually earned the right to be part of your life. And if I never let you back in, if I decide that the past is too much to overcome, then I will still have spent these years knowing my sons. That is more than I deserve. It is enough. He left. Celeste stood in her empty living room and listened to his car pull away. Something was different now. She could feel it in her bones. The wall she had built between them had developed cracks. Not enough to collapse. Not yet. But enough to let light through. The months that followed were quiet and steady. Graham continued appearing on Fridays and Saturdays without fail. He continued writing letters to the boys during the week. He continued building something one small moment at a time. Celeste's relationship with her parents remained strained. Her father called several times. She let most of the calls go to voicemail. When she did answer, their conversations were brief and careful. The easy warmth they had shared before was gone, replaced by something more fragile. Her mother tried to bridge the gap. Dorothy sent cards and gifts for the boys. She texted photos of their childhood home. She apologized repeatedly in long messages that Celeste read but did not respond to immediately. Healing would take time. Trust would have to be rebuilt. Celeste understood this from her experience with Graham. She would not hold her parents to a different standard than the one she had set for him. But she also would not pretend that everything was fine when it was not. Owen turned 7 in the spring. The birthday party was small, just family and a few close friends from school. Graham helped set up decorations in the morning and stayed to help clean up after all the guests had left. At some point during the party, Celeste's parents arrived. They had not been explicitly invited, but they had not been told to stay away either. The tension was palpable. Martin approached Graham in the kitchen while everyone else was occupied with cake. "I owe you an apology," Martin said stiffly. The words clearly cost him something. "I should not have sent you away without talking to my daughter." Graham set down the plates he was carrying. "You were protecting her. I was making decisions that were not mine to make." Graham considered this. Then he nodded. "I understand why you did it. If someone had hurt my daughter the way I hurt Celeste, I do not know what I would have done." Martin's expression flickered with surprise. "That is not the response I expected." "What response did you expect?" "Anger. Blame. Something other than understanding." Graham shook his head slowly. "I have spent the last year learning that blame does not fix anything. Your rejection hurt. Kept me away for 8 years. But I was the one who left in the first place. I was the one who gave up at the first obstacle. You just made it easier for me to do what I was already inclined to do." Martin was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "You are not the same man who showed up on my porch 8 years ago," he said. Graham shook it. "I am trying not to be." Celeste watched this exchange from the doorway. She did not interrupt. She simply observed two men who had both hurt her in different ways trying to find some common ground. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. The summer brought a crisis that no one anticipated. Owen collapsed during a soccer practice in early June. The call came to Celeste's office in the middle of a meeting with important clients. She heard the word hospital and everything else stopped mattering. She called Graham from the car. It was the first time she had reached out to him in an emergency. "Owen collapsed at practice. I am driving to St. Mary's now. I do not know what is wrong. I am on my way." Graham's voice was steady despite the fear she could hear underneath. "I will be there as fast as I can." He arrived 20 minutes after she did. Celeste was in the waiting room, pacing, unable to sit still. Theo was with a neighbor. Everything felt suspended in terrible uncertainty. Graham did not ask questions. He did not demand information she did not have. He simply sat in the chair next to hers and waited. The doctors came and went. Tests were ordered. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky outside the windows while they sat together in silence. Finally, a cardiologist appeared. She explained that Owen had a minor cardiac condition, something he had likely been born with. It was manageable with medication. He would need regular monitoring. But he would be fine. Celeste's knees nearly buckled with relief. Graham caught her elbow, steadying her without making a scene. "Can we see him?" Celeste asked. "He is awake and asking for both of you." The doctor smiled. "He is a tough kid." They walked to Owen's room together. He was sitting up in the hospital bed, looking small and pale but alert. His eyes lit up when he saw them. Dad. It was the first time he had called Graham that. The word hung in the air like something precious and new. Graham's eyes filled, but he did not look away. "Hey, buddy. You scared us." "I scared myself." Owen's voice was tired but steady. "They said my heart has a glitch. Like a computer bug. But they can fix it with medicine." "That is exactly right," Celeste said. She sat on the edge of his bed and took his hand. "You are going to be completely fine. Is Theo okay? Does he know?" "Theo is with the Hendersons. We will call him soon. We wanted to make sure you were okay first." Owen nodded. Then he looked at Graham. "You came." "Of course I came." Graham sat in the chair beside the bed. "Where else would I be?" The question was not really a question. It was a statement. A confirmation of something that had been building for over a year. Owen reached out and took Graham's hand with his free one. So now they sat there, the three of them connected, a family that had been broken and was slowly becoming something new. They kept Owen overnight for observation. Graham stayed at the hospital past visiting hours, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair in the corner of the room. Celeste did not ask him to leave. She did not want him to leave. In the morning, the doctors cleared Owen to go home. He was groggy and tired but smiling when they wheeled him out in the mandatory wheelchair. "This is embarrassing," Owen protested. "I can walk." "Hospital rules," the nurse said cheerfully. "Consider it a free ride." Graham brought the car around. Celeste helped Owen into the back seat. And then they drove home together, a strange little caravan of people who were still figuring out what they meant to each other. At the house, Graham helped get Owen settled on the couch with blankets and his favorite books. Theo came running in from next door and immediately attached himself to his brother, needing physical proof that Owen was okay. "You were in the hospital," Theo said, his eyes wide. "That is serious." "It was not that serious," Owen said, trying to sound brave. "They just wanted to check my heart." "Your heart is the most important thing," Theo said solemnly. "It is what makes you alive." "I know. But it is fine." The doctors fixed it with medicine. Graham watched the boys interact, his expression soft with something Celeste could not quite name. Love, certainly. But also something like wonder. As if he still could not quite believe he was allowed to be here for these moments. She found him in the kitchen later, washing dishes he had not been asked to wash. "You stayed all night," she said. "You did not ask me to leave." "I did not want you to leave." Graham turned off the water but did not turn around. The silence stretched between them. "That is the first time Owen called me Dad," he said finally. "I noticed. I did not ask him to. I never would have asked him to." "I know." "Does it bother you?" Celeste considered the question. A year ago, it would have enraged her. 6 months ago, it might have unsettled her. Now, after everything, she found she could not summon anything but tired acceptance. "He gets to decide what he calls you," she said. "That is his choice. I will not interfere with it." Graham turned to face her. His eyes were red-rimmed from the sleepless night. "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me be here. For not shutting me out when it mattered most. For giving me a chance I do not deserve." Celeste leaned against the counter. The exhaustion of the past 24 hours was catching up with her. "You have been consistent," she said. "For 16 months. You have not missed a single visit. You have not broken a single promise. When Owen was scared and confused and in a hospital bed, you were there. You stayed all night in an uncomfortable chair without anyone asking you to. I would have stayed longer if they needed me to. I know. She paused. That is why Owen called you Dad. Graham's expression shifted. Something like hope flickered in his eyes, then disappeared as he controlled it. What happens now? He asked. I do not know. Celeste pushed away from the counter. But I am not pushing you away anymore. I am not holding you at arm's length and waiting for you to fail. You have proven something over these months. Something I did not think was possible. What did I prove? That you are not the man who left. You became someone different. Someone who shows up. Someone who stays even when it is hard and boring and thankless. Graham's voice was rough. I had a lot of lost time to make up for. You cannot make up lost time. She shook her head. You can only be present now. That is all any of us can do. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Then that is what I will do, Graham said. Be present. For as long as you let me. Celeste nodded. Then she surprised both of them by stepping forward and hugging him. It was not romantic. It was not forgiveness. It was simply one human being acknowledging another. Thanking him without words for being there during the worst night of her life since the twins were born. Graham's arms came around her carefully, like he was afraid she might break. Or maybe afraid she might change her mind. Thank you, she whispered against his shoulder. For coming back. For staying. Always, he said. Whatever happens next. Always. The summer settled into a new rhythm. Graham was present more often now. Not living with them, but nearby. 15 minutes away in a modest apartment he had rented after selling his penthouse. He came for dinner 3 times a week instead of just Fridays. He attended all of Owen's cardiac checkups. He sat in the audience at Theo's art show and clapped loudly when Theo won an honorable mention for his abstract painting of stars. The boys called him Dad without hesitation now. It had become natural, evolved rather than demanded. Celeste watched these developments with something that felt increasingly like hope. She had trained herself not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to expectations, and expectations led to disappointment. But watching Graham teach Owen to ride a bike with training wheels, watching him praise Theo's drawings with genuine enthusiasm, watching him show up day after day without fanfare or expectation of praise, it became harder to maintain the protective skepticism she had carried for so long. One evening in late August, after the boys were asleep and the dishes were done, Graham and Celeste sat on her back porch. The summer heat had softened into something bearable. Crickets sang in the darkness. I read something you wrote, Celeste said. Graham went still. What did you read? An essay. Published in that architecture journal I still subscribe to. About fatherhood. About failure. About trying to rebuild something from wreckage. I did not know you still read that journal. I read everything in my field, including pieces by people I used to know. Graham was quiet for a moment. I did not tell you about it because I did not want it to seem like I was trying to manipulate you. Like I was using public confession to win points. I know. That is why I did not mention it until now. I wanted to see if you would bring it up yourself. I was afraid to. Why? Because that essay was honest in ways I am not sure I had the right to be. I wrote about you. About the boys. About what I lost and what I was trying to rebuild. It felt like exposing something private. Celeste turned to look at him in the dim porch light. It was honest. Maybe the most honest thing I have ever seen you write. I meant every word. I know. She paused. You donated the payment to a single mother's organization. Graham nodded. It did not feel right to profit from telling our story. You could have used that money. Your finances are not what they used to be. I do not need money. I need to be better. Money does not fix that. The words settled between them. Celeste remembered the man she had fallen in love with 10 years ago. Charming. Ambitious. So certain of his own future. The man sitting beside her now was different. Quieter. Humbler. Stripped of the arrogance that had once made him seem invincible. You have changed, she said. Really changed. Not just performing change. Actually transformed. I am trying. No. She shook her head. You are not trying anymore. You have done it. You are not the man who left me pregnant and alone. You are not the man who ran because he was afraid. You are someone else now. Graham turned to face her. In the darkness, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Does that mean anything? For us? I do not know what it means yet. Celeste's voice was careful. But I am not running from the question anymore. Neither am I. They sat in silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the house, one of the boys coughed in his sleep. The ordinary sounds of a life being lived. What happens now? Graham asked. The same question he had asked in the hospital. The same question that had no easy answer. We keep doing what we are doing, Celeste said. Showing up. Being consistent. Letting whatever this is develop naturally instead of forcing it. That is enough for me. I know. She reached over and took his hand. That is part of what changed. You do not need more than I can give anymore. You are not pushing for something I am not ready for. You are just present. I learned that pushing does not work. Graham's fingers intertwined with hers. I learned that real change happens slowly. Day by day. Choice by choice. Yes. So I will keep choosing this. Whatever this is. For as long as you let me. Celeste did not answer with words. She simply held his hand in the darkness, and that was enough. 2 years after the gala at Whitmore House, the world looked completely different. Graham lived 15 minutes from Celeste and the boys. He saw them 4 or 5 times a week. He attended school events and doctor's appointments. He had learned to braid Theo's hair when it grew long enough to need it. He had learned to let Owen win at chess occasionally without making it obvious. He and Celeste were not married. They might never be. The wound he had inflicted ran too deep for simple repair. But they had built something functional and honest around it. A parenting partnership rooted in showing up rather than feeling entitled. The boys, now 8 years old, thrived in ways that made both parents' hearts swell with pride. Owen had developed an interest in computer programming that his teachers called advanced for his age. His cardiac condition was managed with medication and regular checkups. He no longer seemed fragile. He seemed determined. Theo's artwork continued to evolve. His paintings hung in school exhibitions and the hallways of their home. He had started writing stories to accompany his drawings, creating small books that he presented as gifts on birthdays and holidays. Both boys called Graham Dad without hesitation. Both boys understood, in the way children understand complicated truths, that their family did not look like other families, but that did not make it less real. Margaret Weston had become a regular presence in their lives. Graham's mother had been devastated by his choices 8 years ago, but she had also been desperate to know her grandsons. When Graham finally introduced them, Margaret had wept openly and held the boys like she was afraid they might disappear. I missed so much, she had said. But I am here now. You are, Celeste had replied. And that matters. The relationship between Margaret and Celeste had grown into something unexpected. 2 women who had both been abandoned by the same men in their families, finding common ground in the children they both loved. Celeste's parents remained part of the picture, though the relationship had changed permanently. Martin was more careful now. More humble. He had apologized multiple times for his decision 8 years ago, and Celeste had accepted those apologies even though the trust had not fully returned. Dorothy made up for lost time with aggressive grandmothering. She baked cookies and sent care packages and called every Sunday to hear about the boys' weeks. It was not perfect. Nothing was ever perfect. But it was real and good and more than any of them had expected. On a Saturday afternoon in autumn, Graham and the boys went to the park near Celeste's house. The same park where he and Celeste had fallen in love 10 years ago. Different now. He was different. They were all different. Owen was teaching Theo a chess opening on a bench. Their heads bent together, one explaining while the other listened. Graham watched them from a few feet away, present but not intrusive. Celeste appeared, walking from her car at the edge of the park. She had been running errands. Now she approached the bench where Graham sat and settled beside him. "Remember when we came here?" she asked. "Before everything." "I remember. I was so certain about us then." "So was I." Graham watched their sons, these small people who existed because he and Celeste had loved each other once. "I was wrong about everything else. But I was not wrong about wanting to be with you." Celeste turned to look at him. Something in her expression had softened over these months. The hard edges worn away by consistent proof that he had become someone new. "You are not the man who ran," she said. "I can see that now. I am trying not to be." "No." She shook her head. "You are not trying. You have actually become someone else. The man who ran does not exist anymore." Graham felt tears prick his eyes. He did not try to hide them. He has spent 2 years learning that vulnerability was not weakness. That tears were not failure. That showing up fully meant showing up with all of himself, including the broken parts. "What happens now?" he asked. The question that had defined their relationship for 2 years. Celeste reached over and took his hand. The same gesture from countless evenings on her porch. The same quiet connection that had been building through hundreds of small moments. "We keep choosing this. Every day. Even when it is hard. That is all we need to do. That is everything." They sat together watching their sons in the autumn light. The trees were beginning to turn. Gold and red leaves caught the breeze and drifted down around them like confetti. Owen looked up from his chess explanation and waved at them. Theo followed his gaze and grinned. Dad. "Come look at this move Owen showed me." Graham and Celeste stood together. They walked toward their children with hands still intertwined. The road forward remained uncertain. The past could not be erased. The years Graham had missed would always be missing. The harm he had caused would always have caused ripples through their lives. But something had been built from the wreckage. Something real and strong and worth protecting. Graham understood finally that love was not a feeling. It was not the rush of new romance or the certainty of young passion. Love was a choice made again and again. In the boring moments and the difficult ones. When no one was watching and when everyone was. He had made the wrong choice once. He had run when he should have stayed. He had chosen fear over faith. But every day since his return, he had made the right choice. Showing up. Being present. Earning the right to be called Dad one small moment at a time. That was what redemption looked like. Not a single dramatic gesture. Not a grand apology that fixed everything. Just the slow, steady work of proving through action that change was real. As Graham reached the bench where his son sat, Owen looked up at him with eyes so much like his own. "Dad, watch this. I am teaching Theo the Sicilian defense." "Show me," Graham said. He sat beside them on the bench, Celeste settling on his other side. Theo leaned against Celeste while Owen demonstrated the chess moves with careful precision. The 4 of them huddled together as the afternoon light turned golden and long. From a distance, they looked like any other family in the park. Mother, father, 2 sons enjoying a Saturday afternoon. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that would suggest the years of pain and absence and slow rebuilding that had brought them to this moment. But they knew. All of them knew what it had cost to get here. And that made every ordinary moment feel like a gift. Graham looked at Celeste over their sons' heads. She met his eyes and smiled. Not the brilliant smile of their early romance. Something quieter, deeper. The smile of someone who had been hurt and healed and learned that love could survive almost anything if people were willing to do the work. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. "For what?" she mouthed back. "For this." Celeste's smile deepened. She reached across their sons and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for coming back," she said quietly. "For staying." "Always," Graham said. "Whatever happens next. Always." The boys finished their chess demonstration and demanded ice cream from the shop across the street. Graham stood and offered his hand to help Celeste up. The 4 of them walked together toward the crosswalk, the boys running slightly ahead in their eagerness. Graham watched his family move through the golden afternoon light. These three people who had given him a second chance he had not deserved, who had allowed him to become someone new. The man who had run from that apartment 8 years ago would not recognize the man walking toward ice cream with his sons. That terrified young man who had believed himself incapable of fatherhood, incapable of commitment, incapable of staying when things got hard. That man was gone. In his place stood someone who had learned that courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was showing up anyway. Courage was choosing to stay when every old instinct screamed to run. Courage was admitting mistakes and doing the slow, unglamorous work of fixing them. Graham caught up to his sons at the crosswalk. Theo grabbed his right hand. Owen grabbed his left. Celeste stood beside them as they waited for the light to change. Just an ordinary moment. A family waiting to cross the street. But Graham understood now that ordinary moments were everything. That life was not made of grand gestures and dramatic declarations. Life was made of a million small choices. A million opportunities to show up or walk away. For 2 years, he had chosen to show up. Every single time. And standing here with his family, waiting for a green light, heading toward ice cream on a Saturday afternoon, Graham Weston finally understood what he had been building all along. Not redemption. Not forgiveness. Not even love, though love was certainly part of it. He had been building trust. The only thing that mattered. The only thing that could make a family real. The foundation that all the other things rested upon. Trust took years to build and seconds to destroy. He had destroyed it once. He had spent 2 years rebuilding it. And now, watching the light turn green, feeling his son's hands in his own, seeing Celeste smile at something Theo said, Graham understood that the rebuilding would never really be finished. Because trust was not a destination. It was a practice. A daily choice. A promise renewed every morning and kept every night. He would keep making that choice. Every day. For the rest of his life. Not because it would earn him something. Not because he was working toward some final reward. But because this was who he had become. A man who stayed. A man who showed up. A man whose sons called him Dad and meant it. The green light glowed. The family stepped off the curb together. And Graham Weston walked forward into the ordinary, extraordinary life he had almost thrown away. The end.